Welcome to the Gestalt IT Rundown for today, Wednesday, April the 19th, 2023. And if you think things are crazy out there, you're right, because it is National Banana Day. So we are joining you with a banana load full of great news that you're going to want to listen to. Joining me is my cohort and, probably a connoisseur of the banana, Mr. Stephen Foskett. Stephen, what's your favorite flavor of ice cream to put on a banana split?
Wow, you caught me by surprise there, Tom. I was honestly just hanging out here on National Hanging Out Day and drinking a little bit of amaretto on National Amaretto Day, so I just don't have an answer for you today.
You know what? If you put amaretto on a banana split, I think you'll probably be doing better than the rest of us. So why don't you go ahead and do that as you listen to this great rundown of stories that we have for you today. First up is an announcement from our friends over at Solo.io because they have a new addition to their Glue platform. Glue Fabric, I see what you did there. Builds on the existing platform with some features like a unified control plane, multi-cloud networking management, and centralized policy management. Now, in the press release, Solo.io says that these new features are designed to solve some of those challenges of Cloud Native 2.0. If you're still running Cloud Native 1.0 and you're wondering what those new features are, that would be Zero Trust Service Mesh, modern API management, microservice clusters, and a whole bunch of bug fixes in an effort to bring you a new, exciting cloud platform 2.0, whatever. That's every release note on the App Store. But thankfully, Glue Fabric fixes all of those problems. Stephen, how can the people that are looking to maybe adopt the Glue platform from Solo.io, how can they use it in their deployments? What did you find out when you looked this up?
Yeah, this is, well, honestly, we've been very, very impressed by Solo.io. They presented its field day for a few times now, Cloud Field Day, most recently, actually, just earlier this year, where they talked about their service mesh in quite a lot of detail. If you're not aware of what's going on, honestly, I feel like the brand name, not Solo.io, Glue, really tells the story. That's what they're making. They're making glue. And in the modern world of applications, that's what the world needs, right? They started with a couple of different technologies. As you mentioned, you've got Zero Trust and APIs and, dynamic discovery of resources and so on. In the product, they've embraced this whole service mesh concept. But think about it this way. Glue now has a gateway that allows you to modernize more traditional applications. They have a service mesh that allows you to modernize microservices and VMs in a highly scalable way on public or private cloud with Kubernetes. And now they also have cross-cloud capability with Glue Fabric, where they can build a multi-cloud control plane, have multi-cloud connectivity, really a truly integrated system that crosses clouds. And I think that this is really what's interesting and important about this product. We've heard again and again that companies are very interested in having or in not being only in one cloud. The problem is that if you're trying to build multi-cloud, the easy way to do it is basically to abstract everything all away. So you're basically just using the clouds as infrastructure, which is not really a great way to do it. A much better way is to build a truly integrated cross-cloud solution. And that's really what Glue is trying to do, or Solo.io is trying to do with their Glue Fabric. They're trying to build something that truly integrates both on the Kubernetes side as well as on the cloud side and gives you a real cross-cloud capability. I love it. I love what they're doing, and I can't wait to hear more from Solo.io about this. Tom, we previously covered the Western Digital breach on the rundown, but guess what? The stakes just got higher. The hackers responsible, or at least claiming to be responsible, have said that they made off with 10 terabytes of data, including customer data. And they're willing to forget all about it, provided WD pays them a ransom of 8 figures or more. Just in case you think the hackers are bluffing, they were able to provide proof of some sort to some TechCrunch via some a file signed with an internal WD security certificate. Tom, is this the real deal? Is this new information, or is this just more bluffing by these hackers?
So I will start off by saying that when I covered this a couple of weeks ago, I kind of reached into the crystal ball and I said that I thought this was ransomware. I was wrong, but I'm betting Western Digital wished I was right. This is so much worse. So we know they broke in. And according to the article, because guess what? They really want to get the press out on this. So the hackers actually talked to TechCrunch directly. And they said, we did think about ransomware, but we decided against it because we figured it would be easier for us to get paid if we stole a whole bunch of data. And oh God, did they steal a whole bunch of data. So not only were they able to provide some of the files signed by an internal WD security certificate, they also got into a Box account. They got all of the executives' personal emails. They were able to take a screenshot of a group call where the CISO for Western Digital was on the call. And then they got into their SAP instance. Tell me that you're trying to provide tons of proof without telling me. Oh, you showed me. That's the problem. And here's the other thing. I think Western Digital is taking a page right out of the standard incident response playbook because according to the hacker reports, and again, take this with a grain of salt, they're calling and calling and calling, trying to get paid, and Western Digital's not even picking up the phone. So they've resorted to calling the executives' personal phones because they have those numbers. So yeah, here's where you're at. You've got a big problem. You lost a whole bunch of customer data. You're going to have to pay to make it go away. You cannot recover from backup. The thing is, like, I thought that the reason why they were mum about everything was because they were scrambling to get their services restored. Their services are still working for the most part. Like internal email and stuff is down, and I think the MyCloud service is still down. I think Western Digital just shut everything down until they can figure out what they got. The answer is everything. So, I wrote this article a few weeks ago. Assume that you have been breached, because when the news comes out, it isn't going to be pretty. If you think that, oh, well, they just got a few things, and the fact that they're willing to go to the press means that they are trying to put the screws to the executives and get paid. I have no doubt in my mind that the FBI is probably deeply involved in this mess right now. And if these people are in any kind of jurisdiction where the FBI can find them, oh man, this is going to be a fun story. Not for the folks at Western Digital, though. And God bless the CISO, because I don't think he's going to be having a lot of fun coming up pretty soon. Stephen, we saw a big blockbuster acquisition happen last week. Emerson Electric announced that they're picking up National Instruments. You probably have seen this in the news as NI. That's what they're known as now. But they're doing this to add to some of their test and measurement solutions. Emerson has been kind of looking at this for a bit. They're going to end up paying $60 a share for the acquisition, which equates to about $8.2 billion. Now, they've made several bids in the past. They, floated a number of about $53 a share just a couple of months ago. The folks at NI were kind of like, we don't know for sure. Finally, though, $60 I think was kind of the limit of what they were going to pay, and that kind of got all the parties involved happy, because this has been something that the Emerson CEO Lal Karsanbhai, so I'm sorry if I butchered that, has been wanting to do for quite a while, because ultimately what he's going to do is he's going to use the acquisition of NI to kind of turn them into a pure play automation company. I think that that's kind of a big deal, but they were not the only company that were kind of in the running for this right up until the very end. But Stephen, I guess the question is, knowing how big National Instruments is and all the things they're responsible for, what does this mean for their customers, but also for the people who've been competing against Emerson and against NI for so long?
Yeah. Well, I think that this shows us just how important the test and measurement market is. We've heard from our friends at Keysight, which is a competitor in this space as well, recently at Tech Field Day. And frankly, I think it's one of those things where a lot of people maybe forget about test and measurement, but there is a lot of actually exciting stuff going on in this market. As you mentioned, the idea of automated testing, the idea of basically applying all of these internet technologies that we've all gotten used to in terms of scripting and AI to basically building better products and making sure that products work is actually a very interesting space in the industry. And I'm going to go a little bit further. We've talked on the rundown, of course, about things like ransomware and cybersecurity and threat intelligence and the challenges of detecting problems and fixing problems after they happen. Well, wouldn't it be nice to be able to know that systems were maybe not immune, but at least proven that they would not be susceptible to various problems? That's kind of what these companies are doing. This is not your dad's oscilloscope anymore. This is actually a pretty cool advanced electronic testing and automation system. And it's a pretty big market as well, as you mentioned. I mean, the company's the acquisition was about $8 billion, which is quite a lot of money. And the other players in this space are all very large companies as well. So all I can say is it would be a very good idea to check out what NI is doing, as well as other companies in the test and measurement market, because I think you might be surprised at how interesting that market is. Prosimo announced a new suite of full-stack cloud-native networking solutions today. Virtual Transit Builder allows teams to drag and drop network connections to onboard services and applications to speed development. Cloud Tracer gives your troubleshooting teams a visual way of identifying issues quickly and understanding how those issues impact other areas of your cloud environment. Lastly, the Adaptive Service Insertion solution makes it easy to deploy security policies without human error. Tom, you're our networking nerd. You had a chance to talk to Prosimo this week. What do you think about these new tools?
Yeah, I did get the chance to sit down with them on Monday and talk to them about this before it went out live. I'm kind of interested at their take on the whole cloud native networking, multi-cloud type of thing. When I talked to their team, they said, a lot of companies will tell you that they do cloud networking. And what they mean is that you're going to have to install our stack on top of everything that's there. And you're basically going to have to use our virtual routers to manage your infrastructure, and VNets and VPCs are just kind of a thing that happen, and we don't really want to deal with those. Prosimo, on the other hand, said, well, you've already invested in your infrastructure. You've already spun up these VNets and these VPCs. Why not use them? And so that's one of the things they're doing, because they're, they have spokeless technologies. Like, you do not have to go out and deploy a virtual asset to your, wherever your location is in order to manage it. You can do everything natively. And it's all done through the GUI. So you don't have to worry about, using Terraform to do all kinds of ridiculousness on the back end. And then what happens when your Terraform scripts drift from each other? Oh, we tweaked something over here because it runs a little bit faster. And then 3 tweaks down the road, it doesn't work the way that it did before. So essentially what you're doing is, with these 3 tools, they all kind of do something a little bit differently. We start out, Transit Builder allows you to just do drag and drop stuff all over the place and build the architecture together. Great. The Cloud Tracer is important because what it does is it allows you to troubleshoot when that mess happens. But it can also tell you everything that's going on in the system. It can look at the way things are being deployed. It can help you kind of create these archives of the Terraform scripts that were doing things and unwind all the mess, so that if something goes unaccording to plan, what have you. And also these tools allow you to kind of do a test of the system to make sure that the changes are going to get checked in properly. So that allows you to, deploy things more efficiently when you can pop up the results and go, see, it isn't going to break anything. But the part that I really loved was the adaptive service insertion. This was an interesting idea, being able to kind of craft these, intent-based business security needs and deploy them. Something as simple as, where do we want the firewall to go? Well, normally people are like, oh, well, I need to put it right here at this choke point. Why do you need to put it at a choke point? Why can't you just firewall a flow? And that's what Prosimo is offering you. By doing service insertion per flow, I can say this PCI credit card data is in the firewall. This user-facing traffic that's just getting dumped out to TikTok isn't. Now, where that's valuable to me, and I'm actually, there'll be an article coming out about this very soon, is this idea of a firewall not as a choke point, but as a cost choke point. Because one of the things that I love about the cloud is not only does it allow you to fail quickly, it allows you to run up a really huge bill because it won't break. It will just keep growing. And so that was one of the things that the Prosimo folks were talking about. Is like, yeah, we've had some customers who called us and went like, yeah, our cloud firewall bill last month was insane, because instead of it falling over like a physical firewall, it just kept adding on to the instances to be able to keep this traffic going, and we don't want to pay for that. So I think that there's a lot of real benefits here, and I'm very excited to kind of see where this technology goes and how it's being adopted in a variety of ways. And like I said, check out gestaltit.com very soon for a write-up on some of the cool stuff that I learned and kind of my perspective on where it's going with some of the security aspects and things like that. Stephen, Amazon Web Services has contributed their Edge Gateway base station specification to the Open Compute project. The gateway utilizes Sonic and Dent from the Linux Foundation to bridge the gap between the cloud and the edge, including OCP's Open Edge servers. Now, I have to ask the question, Stephen, because you're heavily involved in both cloud and edge. Does this kind of blur those lines now?
Well, it's interesting because the E word can mean many things, as we're discussing at Edge Field Day. And let me just take a moment here. We're actually launching our Utilizing Edge podcast on Monday. Check for that in your favorite podcast application. I will say we've actually recorded quite a few episodes already, and this is something that comes up again and again. Essentially, the question is, what is edge? What does edge mean to you? What's the difference between various edges? This unified edge gateway absolutely is a valuable solution in certain edge situations, but it actually is completely irrelevant in other edge situations. So let me explain. First off, this is contributed by Amazon Web Services. So obviously this thing was designed to work with Amazon's edge use case, which is what might be called a micro data center approach, where you basically have a lot of hardware, you've got a lot of space, you've got power, cooling, rack, infrastructure, that sort of thing. And that's what this server is built for. Essentially, it is a specialized network appliance device server that sits in an edge environment and connects that edge to the cloud. So in that case, yes, absolutely, this is indeed blurring the lines. And the server is actually pretty nice, just like the OCP servers that we've seen for running applications. This edge server has a lot of great hardware and a lot of great thinking built into it. And it's designed to be compatible, as you mentioned, with network operating systems like Sonic or Dent. And it's got a lot of support from OEMs and ODMs, including companies that you may have heard of, like EdgeCore, which we've been looking into, Celestica as well, Extreme Networks, which is another company that we know very well. These companies are basically going to use this concept, just like the OCP server has been really exploited in a positive way by the industry outside the hyperscalers. And I think that we're going to see a lot more, systems that look an awful lot like the Edge Gateway-based specification from OCP. Now, that being said, this server is not for everyone. As I said, it's a rack mount server. It's got redundant power supplies. It's got a lot of technology in it. Many edge use cases, for example, retail edge, a lot of industrial IoT settings, mobile and otherworldly edge is some of the things we've talked about on the Utilizing Edge podcast. They wouldn't be applicable. This wouldn't be applicable to them. And there are other hardware platforms that they're looking at exploiting, including some of the companies that presented our Edge Field Day event recently. But that being said, I think that it's really great to see Amazon contributing their hard work and their hard thought on what makes a great edge gateway to the world through the OCP. And as I said as well, I think that this thing is going to see some traction in enterprise edge, in micro data center, and in areas where we need a new kind of scalable server.
All right, Stephen. Well, we have a story or two that we actually want to take a closer look at, and of course they're kind of related to each other. So let's see if you can pick up on the theme here. Intel has made a couple of big moves this week. The first was surprise news that they are exiting the server market. Now, hold on. Before you go running off in the comments, they're not giving up on Xeons, and we know that they're going to get Sapphire Rapids out the door. Instead, what they're doing is they're selling off their server integration business. You used to be able to buy a whole server from Intel. Well, now you're going to be buying it from a company called MiTAC, which is an edge to cloud solutions provider and an ODM partner of DSG. Intel's giving MiTAC the rights to manufacture their existing designs. In addition, they've announced that they are getting rid of their Blockscale ASIC line, which was primarily used in Bitcoin miners. When asked about this by some folks in the press, Intel said that they are continuing to focus on IDM 2.0 operations and narrowing what they're going to be concentrating on. Now, Stephen, we talk a lot about Intel, and let's be fair, we love Pat and we love all the things he's doing over there. But man, that transformation seems to be picking up speed now.
Absolutely. It is kind of breathtaking to see all the moves that Intel is making. And honestly, they kind of have to make these moves. I mean, this is a company that, did you know that Intel was in the drone business? Did you know that Intel made servers? And as you say, a lot of people were like, whoa, 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 when this was announced, because they're like exiting the server business and they jumped to Xeon and all that. No, 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 no. That's not what this means. This means that Intel's not going to make the actual server. And if you're saying, I didn't know Intel, yeah, they do. Intel has for a long time used the server business, the NUC business, the motherboard business, graphics card business. All these businesses are ways of building sort of development platforms, seeding the market for their products, and also building reference systems that others can build on and use those same design ideas in their own servers. As a way to kind of prove out the product. And, I can absolutely see why that was valuable to Intel, but I can also see why Intel might say, you know what, we shouldn't be in this market. We shouldn't be, in a way, competing with our ODMs that are out there buying Intel processors and products and developing on it. So it makes a lot of sense. It also makes a lot of sense for this to go to MiTAC, which is a company that you may or may not be familiar with, but they make a lot of this stuff anyway. I suspect, I don't know for sure, but I suspect that they were probably involved in building the Intel servers beforehand. I mean, that would make a lot of sense. And so, there you go. You guys have it. It's not a core business for Intel. I do think that this does have a little bit of a threat to Intel in terms of maybe separating them a little bit from the server business and taking away that valuable hands-on experience integrating and building and selling servers. But at the same time, Intel has great partners. I imagine that they could phone up Dell and say, hey, we want to experiment, we want to test, we want to learn about building servers and server technology, and Dell would be probably more than happy to work with them on that. So, and now, of course, MiTAC, Lenovo, HPE, all these companies are out there using Intel's products. I don't see why they need this. So goodbye. Some of this other discussion is a little bit interesting, though. Tom, why don't you talk to us a little bit more about it?
Well, I just wanted to kind of bring up the point that I agree with you 100% that Intel needs to exit all of these businesses. And I know why they're there. And we've talked about this at length. Bob Swan wanted to own every single product line that he could. He wanted everything to fold back into the middle to drive sales of Intel's core business products. But that's not always a sound strategy. I want you to go to your local department store and I want you to look down the list of all the appliances that are there. You're probably going to see the name Daewoo. You would probably buy a Daewoo toaster, wouldn't you? Would you buy a Daewoo car? Did you know they made cars? You might. But you're going to say at some point, if it's a company is known for making toasters, I'm not going to buy their cars. Likewise, Intel may be one of the best chip manufacturing companies on the planet. I don't know if I want to buy their drones. I don't know if I want to buy their autonomous vehicles. Like, there has to be a limit to what you can do. And I think what Pat is honestly trying to do here is, instead of saying, I want to own every possible SKU that can be, like, if you can put a chip in it, we want to make it because we want to put our chips in it and sell more of it. Pat's going, why? Why don't we focus on what we make really well and supply it to other people who make good products so that our products look better when those are there? Think all the way back to the 90s. It was not buy Intel for everything. It was Intel inside, which was honestly one of their best marketing strategies ever. You didn't ask IBM for, a Cyrix chip. You didn't ask them for the original AMD chips. You wanted an Intel chip, right? But you didn't want Intel to build your desktop PC. I have had experience using Intel servers, and you know what? They're great. They're also reference architecture. They are not going to have the little bits and bobs that make them go a little bit faster than everybody else's. They're a good, safe bet. So I think that this is a brilliant way to do it, because when they double down on the things that they're good at, they're going to make more important things like, I don't know, SoCs. They're partnering with ARM to start a new line of SoCs because that's where the money is right now. Nobody, there are people who want Sapphire Rapids. We know that. There are people who want to bring in, some of the desktop, performance, whatever. But honestly, when you think about the fact that most people are carrying around a very powerful computer in their pocket right now, and those are an order of magnitude more likely to sell. I mean, all you got to do is go look at all of the manufacturers, Intel, Apple, any one of the other ones. They're all taking a bath in the non-mobile PC market, laptops, desktops, all that stuff. Nobody's buying that anymore because what happened? They all bought it over the pandemic, and those things have a shelf life, 3, 4, 5 more years. Boy, phones seem to refresh every year. We seem to want to buy those every year. So if you want to make money now, you make money on SoCs. You don't make them on these super complicated chips that require 5 pounds of copper on top of it to keep it cool. Stephen, do you think that Intel is ramping up to kind of attack that market the way that they should, or are you worried that they're just kind of gonna meander around and not have a direction?
Well, I think this whole move, a lot of Intel's moves over the last year have shown Pat's deep understanding of the chip making business. And one of the problems for Intel, in fact, probably the biggest problem for Intel. Now, I'm sorry, hats off to AMD. You're amazing. You're doing great work in the server design business. Hats off to NVIDIA. You're amazing. You're doing great work in the GPU business. But Intel actually had a lot of this technology and could be competitive, except for manufacturing. That's the thing that's been holding Intel back. We've had chips delayed because manufacturing was delayed because they weren't ready to build them. We've had whole product lines that were hinging on manufacturing advancements that didn't come. We've had incredible, losses in terms of Intel's ability to compete on efficiency, power efficiency, cooling, and so on, because the Intel foundries couldn't offer a competitive product with some of the competition, like TSMC specifically. And Pat has got to know that is the existential crisis for Intel. It's not building servers or drones or even storage devices. It's we've got to be able to build chips that are absolutely leading edge in volume. We've got to be right there. So all of these discussions, I think it all comes back to that core concept. Intel is a manufacturer. They chose not to divest their manufacturing. They chose to be a chip maker. And if they're going to be a chip maker, they've got to be a chip maker. Now, last year, Intel announced that they would produce a Bitcoin mining chip. And we were all like, huh? So the Intel Blockscale chips, we talked about them here on the rundown. And at that time, I remember looking into the camera and saying, this is not Intel saying we want to be in the blockchain market. This is Intel saying we want to fill our foundries with chips that we can make profitably. And okay, we'll make those. So they basically seeded that market to make, to basically, keep the production lines going. Well, here it is in 2023, and Bitcoin chips don't look like such a great market anymore. And so Intel's, well, we're not going to do the next generation of that. We're done with that. It's the same thing with a lot of the other Intel products that we've seen discontinued. But again, look at the deal that Intel and ARM are making. This is about manufacturing. This is about Intel figuring out how to fill the foundries, not just with Xeons or graphics chips, but with ARM chips and systems on a chip, like Tom was just mentioning, SoCs. Intel and ARM, ARM's out there. ARM's used everywhere. If Intel can give ARM and ARM manufacturing companies and ARM license holders a platform where they can manufacture leading edge chips with excellent power and excellent thermals, then Intel is going to get a lot of those orders. It's going to fill up the fabs. It's going to keep those fabs humming. And then Intel is going to have leading technology and good cost effectiveness for their own manufacturing, for their own products. It's like, a positive domino effect. Intel needs to keep the fabs full in order to get Xeon out there in front, in order to get their core desktop processors out there in front, in order to get the graphics processor. Everything requires on manufacturing, and that's the only thing Pat cares about, in my opinion, is getting that manufacturing train hooked up and running, and that's what this is about.
And I agree with you, because it turns out that as we look at what's going on in the wider space of chip manufacturing, Intel's position as an American company that has already understood the challenges of things like the CHIP Act may end up paying off for them, because there are reports coming out that TSMC is starting to put the brakes on some of their plans to expand in Arizona, because they want double the subsidies from the U.S. government, but they also don't want to be involved in the profit sharing things that were built into the CHIPS Act. So basically, they want more money to not have to give money back, and they don't like the fact that there's this transparency thing that has to go on. And so now they're starting to say, well, maybe we don't want to build these fabs in Arizona, and maybe we don't want to do this. And over here on the other side is Intel, Pat Gelsinger, who has been to the White House, who has championed this CHIPS Act, who probably knows exactly what's in it and doesn't have a problem with it. And so if companies, TSMC is one of the largest, semiconductor manufacturing companies on the planet. If they're starting to say, maybe we don't necessarily want to be involved in this, do you not think that Pat Gelsinger is going to be sitting over their side going, hey guys, we got some fab space. You want to go with us? Because we're not going to raise a stink about this. We know what's going on. We're totally happy to do it. So maybe they won't be the TSMC fab stuff. But honestly, unless you're doing something hyper specific like Apple, does that really matter? Because Intel's chips are going to be as good, and that's going to give them different areas to compete in, but also to keep those lines running and keep that investment churning and essentially kind of leveling it all out. And then the advantage that I see there is that if Intel can basically kind of create that economy of scale to drive production costs down to their floor, that makes it almost impossible for anybody else to break into that market here in the US. And given the focus that the US has had for a very long time, for the last, say, 2 years, on trying to onshore chip production for critical assets, for military applications, for intelligence applications, it effectively puts Intel in very rarefied air. Now, that being said, Pat, I know you're a fan of the show, and I love that you watch every episode, because I know you watch every episode. Don't rest on your laurels when that happens. You've got to be hungry, and you've got to keep this thing lean, because if it turns into what it did before, you're not going to be able to pick up from the next stumble.
Well, thanks for the insights there, Tom. Before we go here this week, let's take a look at what's going on the weeks ahead. And you, my friend, have been a very, very busy person, and it looks like you're going to continue to be busy.
You're right, I am. So next week, we're going to be out in Las Vegas, Nevada. Hopefully it won't be 145 degrees this time. We're going to be doing Networking Field Day Experience at Aruba Atmosphere 2023. Aruba Atmosphere is one of those things that we've done quite a few times. We're going to be broadcasting some great presentations on April the 25th. You can check out techfieldday.com for the schedule to kind of see what we're going to be talking about. They have some big announcements that are coming up. I got a sneak peek at them yesterday. You're going to want to tune in. It's pretty cool stuff. And then May 17th, 18th, and 19th, we're going to be back with our latest edition of Mobility Field Day. This is our flagship wireless and mobility event, where we're going to be talking to companies like Juniper, Fortinet, Arista, Cisco. We've got so many people lined up to talk about all the cool things, not only in Wi-Fi, but in private LTE and 5G, because that's a growing market, as we found out with Aruba's acquisition of Athonet, which we covered here on the rundown. There's a lot of things going on, and you need to understand how the differences can work together, and when you should pick one over the other, and that's why you should do Mobility Field Day.
On my side, I've been a pretty busy guy recording the next season of Utilizing Tech. So we wrapped up our season on CXL a couple of weeks ago, and now we're kicking off Utilizing Edge on Monday, April 24th. Every Monday, starting April 24th, there's going to be a new episode. So please do subscribe to Utilizing Edge in your favorite podcast application.
Speaking of your favorite podcast application, if you're not already subscribed to the Gestalt IT Rundown, please do so right now, because in addition to posting this on YouTube, we release an audio-only version if you want to listen to it in the car, driving to the office, if you want to listen to it on the treadmill when you're trying to get those extra miles in and be fit and trim like the new Intel. We'd love that. If you want to leave us a rating and a review on those podcast platforms, we'd love that as well. It kind of lets people know what we talk about here. We're not just the old-fashioned news where we got a little bit of snark in there, which is just the way I like it. It's like the cinnamon on top. We do have new episodes that come out every Wednesday. If I'm not here, Stephen will have a friendly co-host. If Stephen's not here, I will have a cardboard cutout of Stephen that I'll just bounce my jokes off of. No, I'm kidding. We always have great folks here that work with us and are very knowledgeable technical folks. If you have news stories that you'd like to submit to the rundown, please do so. We'd love to cover things that are of interest to you. Our only rule: we don't talk about AI and we don't talk about social media platforms, because that's not news. That's a dumpster fire. But if you want to follow us on your favorite social media platform of choice, just search for the Gestalt IT Rundown, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, Mastodon. I'm sure one of these days Stephen and I are going to create a TikTok account. No, we're not, because we're too old for this. But we're never too old to bring you the great news. So make sure you tune in next Wednesday, 12:30 Eastern time. Maybe I'll have Stephen do some kind of a dance off. If we do, then I'll make sure to have the response from where I happen to be. And we will see you soon.